Hey, what's going on, guys? I got a special guest here today for the hashtag Clockedin podcast. We have John D. Marvin. He's the president and CEO of TSO, which is Texas State Optical. Texas State Optical is the oldest eye care organization in Texas and has provided complete eye care for more Texas families than any other eye care organization in general, which is incredible. So, John, one of in our pre-call, you have a very interesting journey. And one of the things you
Mhm.
brought up was consumer research, and you say how important that is. So, tell me a little bit why is consumer research so important for businesses and just in general for people to learn about their own customers?
Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation to be here. I really appreciate that, and the opportunity to talk about this because it means a lot to me. It's a big part of my story. Consumer research is a fancy title for talking to your customers, and even from a basic experience, like when someone drives onto a car lot and they're considering buying a new car, a good salesman will come up and say, "Tell me what you're looking for. What
Yeah.
brings you here today?" And then they will listen to you and you'll say, "Well, I'm needing a new car. Any particular model that you're interested in?" "Well, I kind of like a four-door sedan. I don't really go for the sports car." "Great. Is there a particular color that you're interested in?" And, just through a series of questions and answers, then that salesman is better able to take you to the precise place on the part a lot and show you the cars that you're interested in. Otherwise, they just start showing you stuff. And unfortunately, a lot of small businesses today just throw a lot of stuff at a customer hoping that something will stick. And instead of taking the time to learn about their customer and to find specifically what it is that they might be looking for in a provider of the services, in our example, in optical services. And when I first got involved in marketing in college, that's
Yeah.
I kind of studied that in college. We took a whole course on consumer research, and I'm reading this and I'm going, this is like cheating. I mean, all this competitive game of business that we get involved in, so few companies actually take the time to go out and talk to customers, that if those that do have a distinct advantage.
Uh,
And
uh,
and I just thought, this is like something I want to be involved in, because
yeah.
I've always said I'm ambitiously lazy. And so if I can figure out a way to get there quicker by maybe using something like research, then I was all in for it. So that's kind of how
I
it came to be.
I love that. And the crazy thing is for the audience to realize is that this isn't for just optical. This isn't just for coaching. This isn't just for business. This is for life. Whenever you go into
Mhm.
these consumer research situations, you hear consumer research and like John said, it's like this big scary word, but it's really just asking people what they want. So if you're on a date with someone, you ask them, "What do you like in a partner?" And they say this, this, and this. And it's like all the answers. And it's like, okay, now you don't have to guess anymore. And you can have a better relationship with those family members or that date or whatever you're trying to do or make that friend. And it's just really being curious in the beginning because there's so many times where John's right. You do have the car salesman who just goes, you got to get the new Hummer because he gets the biggest commission and it's the guy wants to drive a Prius. It just doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, and to use your date metaphor, it's like taking your a first date and getting her a shrimp cocktail, which is, you're splurging a lot, only to find out later in the ER that she's allergic to shellfish. I mean, it's like if you'd have just asked on the front end of it, we would have avoided the hospital visit. And so it's just as simple as talking to people and learning about them, finding out not only what they want, but why they want that, why it's important to them. And so that has really been kind of a fundamental part of my approach to running a business, because it applies, as you point out, to internal customers like employees.
100%. And the better you understand the people around you, the better you understand why they want to come on. And that's
That's right.
why, like, even with the podcast, I asked beforehand, I'm like, what do you want out of this? How can we make this successful for you? What is it that
Yeah.
you want? And so, John, for your journey, what ended up happening where you were actually doing consumer research as a job? Like, how did that end up being?
Well, I was in the eye care space working in ophthalmology, the surgical piece of it. And little bit, so at that time, this was in the 80s. At that time, the biggest, um, uh, the ophthalmology was very involved in providing cataract surgery. They still are.
Yes.
But in the 80s, the number one line item in the budget for Medicare in the United States was cataract surgery.
Oh, wow.
And more people, I mean, Medicare spent more money on providing cataract surgery to people than any other healthcare procedure. And at that time, they were paying about $3,000 to the surgeon per eye. So, and the surgeons, the good ones, were doing anywhere from 50 to 60 of those a week. So, all you just run a calculator on those numbers, and you can see there's a lot of money in that.
Yeah.
Well,
100, yeah,
over
150 to
because it
300
yeah,
grand.
because it is paid for by government, then they decided, well, we don't want to pay that much. So today, that's about $600 per eye.
Oh,
So
wow.
you can see the difference, right? Well, as that began to come down, the surgeons that I was working with said, we've got to come up with another way to make money. And so I thought, well, let's go out and talk to people. Let-
Yeah.
let's find out what it is that we could do. And the one of the areas that was um, most fertile for us were people that were buying glasses.
Okay.
So they don't need surgery. We just wanted to talk to them about what they wanted. And we saw an opportunity to have refractive surgery. And
Okay.
now at that time, it was called radiokeratotomy or RK.
Okay.
But later today, it's called LASIK.
Oh,
And
wow. Okay.
okay, so today it's LASIK. It's done by a laser. In the late 80s, it was done with a blade, and you did incisions on the cornea itself. And so we saw this is a great opportunity. So we
Yeah.
started supplementing the cataract surgery with RK surgery.
Got you.
And that really was the first application in eye care that I had experienced with. And the company that I'd hired hired me away from the surgeons to try to develop this area of research for them,
Oh,
meaning
wow.
eye care, eye care.
Yeah.
And so I joined that firm and started developing research customers for it. Only 18 months later to get fired from that job. But in the meantime, I had came across this company out of Beaumont, Texas, called Texas State Optical, and at that time they had the largest share of what we call primary care, eye care, primary eye care patients,
Yeah.
people buying glasses and contacts and so forth. And once I went to them with what I had learned with the surgeons, they became impressed with all this information, and I ended up selling them a big research project from the new firm that I'd gone to. Okay, so I just got back in my car, drove back over there, and said, "Now I'm in the selling business. So why don't you buy something? You'd said you were interested, and I did." That took 2 years, and I learned a tremendous amount about their business. Ended up consequently getting hired by the franchise group at a large franchise group
Okay.
to help direct their marketing uh, strategies.
Efforts. Yeah.
Ultimately, that led to the franchise group buying the company and asking me to come on as the new president. So that's
Oh, my
kind of
God.
the short version. So consumer research, had I never had the government not reduced what they were paying for cataracts,
Yeah.
and forced us into coming up with a different line of revenue, I wouldn't be president of Texas State Optical.
I and that is just enlightening to me because so early on and so many times throughout our career, we don't realize how long our careers actually are. And we don't realize that the bad things might be the good things. And the bad things might lead to the good things. And it leads to curiosity and it leads to different opportunities every single time because no matter what, even if something's going really well, if you're not with the times and you can't change, you're not seeing those new opportunities. Absolutely.
Well, we develop a set of skills, and sometimes those skills are optimized in certain environments that we're in. And I use an analogy of sports, professional sports. We've all known the second baseman that was just so so with a particular team and then gets traded and becomes this phenom. And
Yeah.
under a different manager, different teammates, they're given a different opportunity to apply their skill sets. And it happens in business. I've known so many people that are in jobs that get frustrated. They don't perform well. Some of us get fired. And then we find ourselves with a different team and a different environment. And it just opens up like a flower blooming. So
Yeah.
yeah, you have to keep believing, faith, and keep pursuing.
So for you, how is that journey going from going to have to sell and getting into that research? Like when you got fired, were you down? Because I kind of want to move to a little bit to the mindset where you're like where it really applies to the audience because they sit there and they go, I've been fired. Like it sucks. Like, how
Yeah,
did
it
you go from
does.
fired to president of an
Yeah.
organization? Like, you know what I mean? Most people sit there and go, that's crazy, but that's what happened, you know?
Yeah, well, in addition to the eye care client, Texas State Optical, I had developed uh, three or four other big clients in the
Yeah.
research business. So I got fired. I got fired because I took on the vice president. It was a small research group. Most research companies, like I deal with, consumer level, are small, meaning they got a couple of hundred employees. So it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
But the owner and the number two person were married to each other. And the number two person was the person involved with gathering the data.
Yeah.
So in a research firm, you've got the analyst side and then you've got the data collection. So the person was the one who's responsible for the phone banks, calling the
Yeah.
surveys and interviewing. Well, I caught her cheating. I mean, she had a project for me that she had done 100 surveys for me, and the demographics were so skewed that I knew that this wasn't accurate. And it
Yeah.
turns out they were not making the phone calls, they were handing out surveys and people were just filling them in. And it happens more than you might want to believe, by
Yeah.
the way. But I called her on it.
Yeah.
And I mean, within a matter of an hour and a half, I was fired and sent out the door. So I had these clients that I had developed, and I called them on my way home, not knowing what the heck I'm going to do. Called them on my way home to tell them that I was fired, and they said, "Well, we like working with you. Would you continue to do the work for us on your own?" And
Oh,
I
so it became
said,
again another you stayed to your guns, you stayed doing the integrous thing, doing the right thing. And even though it didn't pan out specifically right away, but you were able to get these clients again, which is just the I yeah, I applaud you for that.
well, and I didn't go into the details. I didn't see any reason to throw my former employer under the bus necessarily. And I was not soliciting, I was just letting them know so that when they called me, no one answered my phone, that they'd know what happened to me.
Yeah.
And then they said, "Would you be willing to?" I had a couple of projects, finish these projects. And honestly, I thought to myself, sure, I need something to make some money. While I
Yeah.
look for a job, I'll do this. And that turned into my own business. And I did that for about 10 years. during which I had also turned around and picked up TSO as a client, and began doing work for them. And we still do every year. We still do some form of consumer research,
Yeah, and
just to
it's so
validate.
yeah, absolutely, and it's so important to people realizing this, that no matter how big your company is, no matter how much you've done, you should always be getting to know the customers better, getting better to know the people that you're around, getting to know your
Yeah.
employees, getting to know your franchisees. Absolutely. So for you, how did it really? Because the interesting thing to me is like you created your own story. You know what I mean? Like you went on your own journey and you just found different opportunities here and there. Like how did you always leave yourself open and available to these opportunities?
Well, I figured that if either I was going to create my own story, or I was going to allow somebody else to create my story for me. And I had just come from a circumstance where their story for me didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. And so I thought, well, I don't want to go there again. And so I just began to try to seize on opportunities as they presented. And I didn't sit down and make some business plan and formula a strategic plan or anything like that. I just got out and started calling on prospects and seeing if I could sell them some research, working my network, and letting people know what I was doing. And one would lead to a referral. And, I didn't have to have 200 clients. I just needed about a dozen
Yeah.
that periodically over the course of a year would do research with me. And so, and frankly, some of those early clients are still some of my best friends. I mean, I stay in touch with them, and we haven't done work together in years, but I stay in touch.
I love that. I love that because I think it's really the building of a real career is when you find that true happiness and you're around the people you really enjoy. And like with you being at Texas State Optical, what year did you become the president again? Like
In
2001?
2001, yes.
Yeah, so you've been the president for quite some time, and,
Yeah.
like, what's kept you there? What's really kept like, what's so special about it?
Well, I think that the same thing that attracted me in the first place, and that was I saw the potential in the company, and really looked at it. I say all the time it was like this great fixer upper, and so I thought, well, this will be a good project. I kind of consider myself a builder,
Yeah,
someone who I want to accomplish something. I'm not a manager so much as I am a builder, and then I try to have a good positive influence as a leader, and so that building just never, it's like the fixer upper. You keep adding additions onto, and it's just the opportunities continue. Marketplaces change. The circumstances around the company change, and you're always needing to adapt to survive. We're good.
yeah. I don't know what happened, but we'll just keep it
Uh,
rolling.
yeah. So, when you're with a company, nothing stays the same. And
Yes.
so your ability to adapt to change is invigorating for me. It's
Yeah.
energizing to me. If everything stayed the same, I'd have gotten bored and left a long time ago.
So
And so that's
Yeah,
important.
I mean, there's two things you brought up that I think are fascinating. One is that you identify yourself as a builder, as someone who's going out there and doing the work and building the company and embracing that. And then you're someone who you also mentioned you embrace change. And I bring this up just because for the audience, it's super important to realize, are you identifying yourself with these positive markers? Or you're saying you're not enough or not able to do this or it's not possible? Because if you're doing what John's doing, then you're able to create these incredible careers for yourself and these incredible experiences. Because if you label yourself correctly, you'll have a much better existence. You'll have a much better
Uh,
existence. So, John,
yeah.
for you as a builder and someone who embraces change, how do you embrace change? Because I know that's such a problem for so many people in our society.
Well, the good news is you don't have to go out and hunt for it. Change finds you.
Yes.
And then all you have to do is accept it and look for the opportunity in it. And that sounds so cliche, but to a greater cliche is something a friend of mine told me that I believe, and that is, John, you always find what you look for.
Yes.
And I think that from a mindset standpoint, if you look for disaster, tragedy, and chaos, you'll find it. If you
Yes.
look for opportunity, you'll find that as well. Now, it doesn't just manifest itself in immediate success, but if you look for the opportunity in it and you have confidence and belief in yourself, which is not easy, that's easily said, but a lot of times we're beaten down and people, especially if you get fired, I mean, that's pretty abrupt. This suggests that you're not of any value. It's easy to kind of get caught up in that. So you have to surround yourself with support and good people, fill your mind with things that help you to grow. And so the change is inevitable. It's going to happen. You just have to accept it. And I use a phrase that I tell my children. I said, you know, when something happens to you that you didn't expect and it's not real positive, the best thing is to just think about it and say, isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? And then contemplate it. Because if you take that approach instead of freaking out, then you're more inclined to be able to see the opportunity that will present itself as well with it.
I love that because it makes you realize and it has you set there what allows you to be even keel, what allows you to see the opportunities, and what allows you to capitalize on those opportunities. Because, like you said, like there's if it's a bad thing, it's a problem. If it's a good thing, it's a surprise. They're both the same thing. No one ever goes, "Yeah, I had a surprise this morning. My toilet flooded." And you're like, "Flooded the apartment." No one ever says that. They're just like, "I had a horrible morning. This happened, blah 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 blah." And it's that
Mhm.
realizing that no matter what you do, it's the frame you view it as. And
Oh,
I
absolutely.
and I think that opens up a lot of opportunities. So where did that happen? Where did that open opportunity happen with Texas State Optical? Or what might be
Well,
an example of that?
sure. So, um, having taken the helm in 2001, and I helped to orchestrate, I helped the franchisees to buy the company. That's kind of what helped put me in a position. They were a client, the Franchise Association, that I helped to create. And eventually, over the end of that was in the early 90s, by the end of the decade, the franchisees had decided they wanted to purchase the company. And so, being the only real business person in the mix, they turned to me to help them negotiate the acquisition. And when I did, I realized that the motivation that they had to purchase the company was not coming from a place of wanting to build and grow. It was coming from a place of wanting to be left alone. And so, once we got it acquired, the general attitude among the board of directors, which were the franchisees that bought the company, was now leave us alone. And so I thought, well, this will be a pretty good gig. I mean, no
Yeah.
one's going to expect anything out of me. And so for about 18 months, they were left alone. And then at
Yeah.
board meeting, somebody said, we need to grow. We need to add locations. And I said, well, we got a little bit of a dilemma with that because no one's going to really get excited about me charging them money to leave them alone. And
Yeah.
so we're going to have to come up with a value proposition. So, what was very frustrating, I laugh about it now, but at the time, no one wants to be put in a position, somebody who's a builder that basically says, no, you just sit here, make sure that the checks get cleared and no one bothers us. That was very frustrating. So I could have just said, you know what, I'm not going to put up with this, and gone someplace else. But when the opportunity I saw in them, they wanted to grow. I said, okay, well, then how can we grow? And I looked at, you know what we could really be good at is helping young optometrists who want to own their own business. And we could become really good at helping them find a location, get the financing, design the space, and do all the things that are necessary, but young ODs have no clue about doing. And
Yes.
so that kind of became our value proposition. And we started growing, and we added 85 locations to the
Wow.
organization from startups. And
Wow.
we practiced fundamentals in a startup. And after about a dozen of them, it got pretty predictive as to, okay, here's what you're going to do your first year, your third year, and here's what you're going to do your fifth year. And when you can put together a pro forma that's that predictive, then you attract others
Yeah.
that want to get in on that. And so that's how I turned what might have been a very frustrating circumstance into a great opportunity. And honestly, today, some of those people we helped open practices now have been in their practice 10 to 12 years. And I realized that what I was doing was helping them live a dream that they wanted, and help
I
them send their kids to private schools or drive nice cars and do things like that.
Yeah, and that's really what it's all about because I watched a video and it was about Jeff Bezos and he's like, "Yeah, they always have a Forbes list for me." And he's like, "I don't care about the list for me. I care about the list for the value you created for other people." So
Hmm.
it's this idea of finding purpose and actually helping other people. So you made 85 families, and that's just from the person who was the franchisor, let alone the receptionist, the other doctors they
That's right.
hired, all the other people. You're looking at hundreds, if not 1,000 plus people that got impacted in a positive way because of that decision to let's grow. You know what I mean? It all starts with
Hmm.
a let's grow. And then you're able to actually go out there on that mission. And I kind of applaud you for it because I think there's a lot of people who would have been a little too off putting by staying in a job for too long or staying in a job that they don't really like find their purpose in. But like once the opportunity turns, you have that moment to take advantage of the situation. And I find that happens a lot where sometimes we're just too early to it. Like I have that with the podcast a little bit. I started in 2020 and then the tech got much better. So now it's become so much easier, even though we've had a couple tech issues today. But the tech's gotten so much better. So it's easier for me to do the podcast. It's easier now. People are reaching out, and you just kind of start to build the momentum, and it changes everything
Yeah.
for you. But you need to be positioned for that. So I'm letting everyone know. So the audience, if you want to go start something, or if you have a dream, or you have something you want to achieve, you have to start going after it today, even though it might seem really small. But that really, really small thing is going to start to build into something really special, like John just mentioned.
You know, and you can take it one other step in terms of value. I stood in front of a group of, we call them opticians, they're people who work in opticals. And I just asked them the question, what do you do for a living? And then, you know, when you're at a party or Sunday school or you're meeting Little League, and say, well, what do you do? What do you tell them? And I heard that what you might imagine, well, I sell glasses, or I work for Dr. So and so, or this and that. And I said, well, let me suggest you think of it different. Think of it this way. What you really do is you help people see the important things in life. You help that mother and father watch their 5-year-old in T-ball. Because if they didn't have eyewear, they wouldn't be able to see that 5-year-old in T-ball. You help a father walk his daughter down the aisle and be there with clear vision to be able to really experience it completely. I said, so what you're really doing is you're helping people see the important things in life. And when you begin to look at what you do, not as a set of tasks, but as making a difference in the lives of others, it energizes you to a
Yeah,
great degree. Plus, you want to take the time to understand how you can be of most value. to that mother
Yes.
or father or that doctor or that staff member. So you can
Well,
take that. Not only was I helping these doctors, but think of the thousands of families that go to those doctors whose
yes.
lives have been impacted.
I
So it's
I think
amazing.
that's yeah, I think that's so awesome because there's so many of us that like you just said, I just sell glasses and it's like no, no. There's much more to that. And there was a example I heard literally yesterday where it was saying there was one guy who had a bunch of rocks and he was like hammering the rocks. And the one guy's like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm hammering the rocks." And he seemed kind of sad. Then the middle guy is like, "What are you doing?" "Oh, I'm making a stadium." Okay. He was like so. And then the next guy's like, "I'm making a temple." And it's going to be where the communities are going to come and it's going to be amazing. And they were all building the same rocks. So you start to realize that no matter what the activity you're doing, it doesn't matter. It's the underlying purpose, which as soon as you did that,
Mhm,
John, I go, wow, really good leader. Like, you know what I mean?
mhm.
Leadership is off the charts because you start to realize these very little minute things. Because if you can instill that in yourselves, and like for the audience listening, no matter what you do, if you can find the purpose and find the value that you're creating, then you'll have so much more of a drive to go, I don't sell glasses. I provide vision. So now if the glasses are whatever price, it doesn't matter. Like we're helping them see. Why would you not want to like I wear glasses and contacts for the past like 15 years. It's helped me so
Mhm.
much. Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
think of where you'd be without it. It'd be very difficult to
If it
just
was
get through the day. Yeah,
if it was like the 1800s, I don't know. Like, and that's the
yeah.
thing that you don't realize what opportunities we have. And like something I'm really impressed with you, John, is that you're still so innovative. So how do you stay open to innovation and different opportunities? Because a lot of us, as we age, get very stuck in this. I love the routine. And it's like, no, no, no. We have to break up the routine. We have to be open to new and we have to see the opportunities among us.
Well, you know, it has to be intentional. I
Oh,
mean,
100%.
and so I made a decision that I wasn't going to be satisfied with just the status quo. I wanted more. I wanted to be more. I wanted to do more. And then I realized if I'm going to do more, I need to be more. And so I always start with how can I make myself better? And by doing that and putting the work into that, then I that alone creates opportunities to contribute because I'm now a different person. I personally have of more value. So
And
I've learned things.
how would you make yourself better? Like, what was maybe something the audience can do? Like, were you reading books? Did you go to seminars? Like, what was it that you're doing to make yourself better?
Well, yes, all of those things, but it starts with um I think it starts with daily reflection.
Okay.
And so I build into my day first thing in the morning an hour for me to just contemplate what yesterday was like, what I've got on schedule for today, and deciding whether that's moving me towards what I want to accomplish on a bigger level. So I use the week between Christmas and New Year's every year to plan out my coming year. And I
Yeah.
actually start that process mentally probably around Thanksgiving. You start wrapping down and so I've already got some things that I'm planning to do and ideas, but that I get more formalized that week. I put together a reading list. These are the things I want to get better at this next year. And I plan out if there are workshops or seminars I want to go to, I plan those out. Then you have to get a budget. I mean, you have to sit down and go, that seminar is going to be 5 grand, so I need to figure out a way to make sure I've got that budgeted for. In addition, I do this with my staff at the company.
Yeah.
Their annual review, they know now that they are obligated to come to me with how are you going to make yourself better in the coming year? Because the better you are, the more value you are to the company. And so it has to be intentional. You don't just wake up after 20 years and go, gosh, I'm a lot better than I was then. No, you got 20
I,
years of the same experience. you're not any better. So it has to be intentional. Yeah.
And it becomes unique. And so it's pretty funny because this will probably come out in maybe before the new year, maybe right around that time. Because I did New Year's resolutions probably 5 years ago, I think, and I thought the New Year's resolutions were so silly. I go, this is so like what resolution? No, I want new action steps. And then I realized that
Mhm.
with New Year's, like you have all these goals, right? So it's like I'm gonna go to that conference. Well, you buy the ticket for the conference and then you go to the conference. Like, you know what I mean? So I set these
Yeah.
different goals for myself where some of them were like run a marathon or start a business or do with that. And I would hold myself accountable to them each and every week, like you're saying. You're doing it daily, which is incredible. But it's this idea of you have to hold yourself accountable to whatever those goals may be. So if you're sitting there contemplating, like, what do I want to do for next year? You make a list of things that you're like, that would be really cool. Okay, what are these that we can actually move towards and move the needle forward in our big goal of what we want? And the other big thing that John talked about was success. And like everyone's definition of success is different. Like, so
Mhm.
everyone can do different things. Some people want to travel, some people want to build the biggest optical company in the world. Like everyone's got different goals, and that's cool. So it just you got to realize who you are, and learning more about yourself I think is so important. So you taking the time to do this is, I mean, you're leading from the front, which I think is amazing.
One of my mentors makes the statement that nothing in your life will change until you change what you do daily.
Yes.
And it doesn't have to be huge, but you have to every day do something that contributes towards accomplishing what you want changed in your life. If it's losing weight or getting, running the marathon, you've got to do something daily towards that. And the most difficult part is figuring out what it is you want to do, because
Yes.
literally you can do anything.
Yes. The crazy thing, that's what blows my mind because I do reference back to like the 1800s, 1700s, 1600s in my head, and I'm like, they didn't really have a lot of opportunity. It was like do this or do that. In nowadays, we have so many different options that it's hard for us to even think about anything because we're always going a bunch of different directions. So for you, how do you stay focused on what is the most important thing?
Well, it starts with, um, I went through this exercise that helped a lot because otherwise, every year I had a whole new list of things I wanted to do. It's like, well, I
Yes.
didn't get anything done last year, so let me pick out some new ones. And so I read a biography of Benjamin Franklin,
Okay.
and it talks about Benjamin Franklin's 13 virtues. Today we'd call them values, personal values. And so I sit down and I made effort to come up with a set of 7 personal values that above everything else, this is what I commit my life to. And from those values leads me towards a direction. And from the direction, it leads me towards a goal. And from the goal, it leads towards steps. You break it down and you accomplish it that way. And so, for instance, one of my personal values is health.
Okay.
Is to be healthy.
Yeah.
Well, that gives me direction. And so then I have to say, okay, what is my goal going to be towards becoming healthy? So each of my goals in my life, not resolutions for the year, but goals in my life are aligned with those values.
Yeah.
And but without that core set of values, for me at least, it made it difficult to pick where my goals were because
Because
they
you
were
didn't know
all
what the
over the
most important,
place.
yeah, you didn't know what the most important thing was.
Yeah.
I
So that helps me stay focused. And every morning I read through those list of values and I pick one every day that I'm going to focus on for that day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What are the other values if you're open to sharing?
Sure. They are, so I don't make sure I'm missing anything here. I'll look through.
Yeah, no, because I think this is so important. And I really appreciate you sharing this because if we don't know who we are, we don't know where we're going. And a lot of us
Yeah.
don't know ourselves. So the more we know
Mhm.
ourselves and more we know and value what's important to us, we can learn so much more about the world. And like one of the things for
Mhm.
me is like I'm very curious. Why am I curious? That's why I have a podcast. So I can ask smart
Mhm.
people silly questions. So I can learn
Yeah.
about the world. I mean, in all honesty, people don't realize that, but you can ask anything you want of people and they're much more understanding. So I don't know if you have the values pulled up, but yeah.
Yeah, I do. It's important that, because I'm going to give you like my one, I'll just read through them. My first value listed is faith.
Okay.
And so I define that for myself. And that is to live each day with a heart of faith in Jesus Christ, God my Father, and eternal love and care for me. And only by placing all of my trust in His will for me will I live my life of its full potential and free of fear. Second one is love. And then I define that for me. Third one is honesty and integrity. Fourth is joy and happiness. Five is achievement. Six is continual learning. And seven is health mindfulness. So, and like I said earlier, each day I pick, like today is continual learning. And I just, whatever I decide on every morning is I pick one and I say, okay, today I'm going to focus on that value and, and do things that will align with that continual learning. And for today, and frankly, this podcast is an exercise in my learning.
A
And
a hundred,
so,
a hundred
yeah.
percent. And I think the really interesting thing is that the other big thing I want to bring up is that a lot of us get preoccupied with like, I want to be doing so much. I want to read 100 books. But what John did here was he read one book. And that one book changed everything. And now he's got a value system and he applies that value system day in and day out. So it's not about the number of books you read, it's about how much you get out of the books. And I think that it's so incredible that you built this value system. And I appreciate you sharing this because it is super, super important.
I mean, it helps to keep me focused, as you kind of was the question in the beginning, and grounded in things. And by contemplating every morning and selecting one over time, I put more of that into my life
Yeah.
by kind of affirming to myself that continual learning is important. So I
Yes.
look for opportunities to learn, and I'm open
I,
to those.
I love that. Yeah, no, I think this is really, really fascinating. And I'm glad you shared this with me because, and the
Sure.
audience, because it gives you something to realize that you look at these people and it's not like, oh, they just aimlessly go to their job, go to dinner. No, it's very intentional living. And intentional living creates an intentional life, which creates an exciting life and a life of a lot of journey and excitement. So I
Hmm.
think that's absolutely amazing. And the final thing I want to touch on is
Hmm.
if people want to get better at decision making.
So it broke up a little bit on you,
Oh, you're
Jordan. So if
good.
you
Can you
don't
hear me?
mind,
Can you
I
hear me?
can now. Yeah, I
Yeah.
can
So
now.
so so I know that when you make decisions. So I know that when you're
Mhm.
utilizing data, it helps you make better decisions. So
Yes.
for you, how have you utilized data in your life and really thought about these different components? Because a lot of people are scared to make decisions. So they sit in indecision a long time. And I
Hmm.
think that there's a point of you make the decision, you get more data, and then you can make a better decision. So, I mean,
Hmm.
how has data been impactful for you?
Well, I'm a believer that anything you want to accomplish can be measured. And if you're not able to measure it, it's not worth accomplishing. And so even the set of values, love. So you think, okay, how do I determine that I've enveloped that into my life? And you can translate that into generosity, and generosity you can then define it, generosity, as actions that you've taken. And so you can quantify most everything you want to do. The I have found that the difficulty is not so much in measuring or quantifying, it is an actual decision making.
Yeah.
And and that is like my friend who told me the best way to learn how to climb a mountain is to climb a mountain. The best way to learn how to make good decisions is make a decision. And if
Yes.
it's not good, then change it and make a different decision.
Well,
But
the
always
funny thing
decide.
the funny thing is that most people don't realize that they're always deciding. So, like, you might have lived
Mhm.
in your same house for however many years. People don't realize that that's a decision every single year and every single day to be like, I still want to live here. I still like this community and this is something I
Yeah.
do. Because most of the time we plan, take the action, and then we never replan. So it's a very interesting thing. But John, you've been absolutely amazing. And where can people learn more about you and Texas State Optical?
Well, TSO.com is our website. And there's a feature on there to contact us. And they can certainly reach me through that. My email address is jdmarvin at TSO.com.
Okay.
And if you'd like, email me. I'd love to hear what's going on in your life in terms of your growth and what you're doing to make yourself better. And I'm happy to share my story. If it can be of value, great.
Awesome, John. I appreciate the time.
You bet. Nice to be here.